Good morning. It is Brian at Expert Dojo. Again, I have a phenomenal entrepreneur. And again, the objective of this stream is so that investors get to see the companies that we're really excited about because they are growing at a trajectory which we believe is on course to be a unicorn. And as a founder, we try and pick one piece which is incredibly useful to you. Like we've done these streams before whereby the piece has been that like one of our founders got WhatsApp as a religion and like she's growing at 200% growth every single year because of WhatsApp growth and groups and communities. We had other founders who were in and they were working through the enterprise and they guided us through how do you build really good enterprise growth. We had other founders who were amazing at cold calling, other founders amazing at email growth. But pretty much the idea behind this is that you kick off your Monday morning with a bit of an oomph because you have an incredible founder building something phenomenal with real tips and tricks that will help you grow. And for the investors who are watching, sometimes the rounds are already subscribed. Like I know Ben's round with Staple, who's going to be on today, got massively oversubscribed extremely quickly, but they'll have more rounds in the future. So now you have these companies on your radar. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit today. I've got like this term escape velocity, which is like voomp right inside my head. And the term comes from the moment where it goes from a feeling. You kind of, at the beginning, we all believe we have something incredible. And then we interact with our customers and we realize it's a long way away from incredible. It needs to be built. Then we have a feeling based on our engagement with our customers, with our consumers, that we're breaking through. And then we know it. And in the moment that we know it, that's when we hit escape velocity. Every founder on the planet wants to hit escape velocity because the moment we have it, we just got to strap ourselves in and make sure we don't mess anything up. That's about just sustaining. Okay. I believe Ben from Staple, who's going to be on today, is hitting escape velocity right this moment. It is a phenomenal story. It is a deep tech company. It's in the AI space, but most importantly, it's in the I am helping customers space and doing it by taking so much information that's out in the world today and being able to put that in a way that customers are able to understand it, take insights from it, and actually do something with it. And because of that, because of how he's engaged with his customers, his growth is going like this, which of course means he's oversubscribed. And this, considering we are in June 2024, which is possibly one of the most illiquid and difficult times to raise money, you want to understand how a founder who doesn't have a tremendous access to investors, who is based in Singapore, which is a heck of a long way from the US or a lot of other places where there's lots of investors out there, how that founder is oversubscribing while most other founders are really struggling. So without further ado, let me go down here. Let me grab Ben, and we're going to bring Ben into the show. And with that, we are going to run through everything that we need to do to get you started. So while I'm waiting for Ben to come up, I just want you to know, like this founder we invested in about 2 years or so ago. And when I invested into it at the beginning, my feeling for Expert Dojo was this is going to be an amazing founder because the founder not only has a solution which was desperately needed in the world, not only has a market size where the market size is growing by the second because there's so much more information all the time in the world, but he's a stone cold killer. And that means you like that, don't you, man? You like stone cold.
I do.
Are you going to go home tonight and say, "Hey, listen, darling, just so you know, you married a stone
Yeah,
cold"?
look out. Very cold killer. I like it.
Welcome to the stream. And this is wonderful for me because I get to show off an incredible entrepreneur that we had the privilege of investing in. And it's wonderful for the people looking at it because they're going to understand how to really approach enterprise sales with a view to winning. So would you maybe share a little bit more now on what Staple does, why it was so important, maybe the genesis of why you left an easy life to move into startup land, which in Singapore is not an easy thing to do, and build up this thing that you knew that actually to sell to enterprises was going to be a relatively long sales cycle?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for the intro. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller, so it's good to be here. Staple is an AI SaaS company that specializes in document processing, document reconciliation. But fundamentally, we convert all this vast, unstructured document data into structured data at scale. And when I'm talking about documents, I'm talking about them in the broadest possible sense. So it could be, scanned paper documents, typed, handwritten, doesn't matter, native PDF files, Excel files, XML files, digital files such as e-invoices in some jurisdictions. That entire range of file types and document types we can ingest, read, translate, reconcile, look for the similarities in the documents, and then index all that data so it can be processed into other systems. Fundamentally, you can't automate a process unless you have structured data. So that this is a fundamental step in the process of automation. 70+% of enterprise data is not in a structured format. It's unstructured or semi-structured. So you need a solution like Staple to convert this data into workable data.
So if we're working it backwards, just from like a 5-year-old's perspective, any large organization of anything, even if it's like 100 people having a game of football where there's a couple of teams playing, you need a structure, you need like a system behind that, or people are just going to be kicking the balls at everybody. And so all organizations have to have systems, and they have to have automation built into the systems, or they're not really systems. But 70% of those companies don't have structured data, which means they can't build systems, which means that there's no way for them to create the football teams. Like what you're saying is that literally the world is in chaos.
Well, not 70% of data within all organizations is basically this kind of messy data. It needs to be standardized. It needs to be cleaned up and structured. Yes, it's chaotic. So, you can't really scale or automate without some kind of order. We bring that order to this process.
And this has to be terrifying for CEOs because you just don't know what's happening in that 70%. That's the real thing. You can have people attacking the 70%. You have cyber attacks on it. You can have bugs in it. You can have things that customers are engaging with that you don't even know because you don't have it in a proper structured way.
Right.
And so first of all, what everybody should be realizing here is when you're looking to build a venture backable company, which is a company that can be worth in the billions of dollars, you need to have an incredibly large market, which means you have to have a massive problem. It cannot be just a feature. And so what you're starting to realize from what Staple does is this is a huge problem. Right? It's not an issue. If the end objective of all of this is to be able to grow so that we can raise money, grow so that we can raise money, and then grow so we can raise money, and then grow so we don't have to raise money anymore, then to be able to do that market size and that huge problem is the first fundamental marker that you have to make sure that you're in place. Now, once you knew that you have that, you now have a separate problem, right? And the separate problem is there's a lot of people out there who are promising to be solving a related problem or something in the hemisphere of structured or unstructured data. How did you, once you'd worked out, okay, we have a skill set within our team, we've built out an incredible person who's like extremely strong at this, and other people in the team as we're growing up who can solve the problem. How did you start to distinguish yourself from the red ocean of other providers out there who are doing something of the same, including the consultants who are doing it manually?
Yeah, sure. So I experienced this problem myself, right? So I worked as a consultant in the Big Four for a number of years. I worked as a CFO. During that time in my past career, there were options to solve this problem, and that was to just throw armies of people at the problem and manually, process this data. I did that in a number of situations, and setting up offshoring teams, or teams in lower labor cost jurisdictions to manually process this data. But some of the companies I worked for, they were receiving documents in English or local languages, so Indian languages in some cases, could have been Malaysian languages. But as those global organizations started to expand, they started to receive documents from Korea or Romania or Japan. And suddenly the labor force you have in place isn't equipped to manually process these documents anymore. So this was really the genesis of our journey. We realized that if you really want to be a global player, you need a back office capability that can support that growth, and not have this barrier to scale that's limited by various languages or various document types or various file types. Because let's face it, if you are scaling globally, you're going to have to deal with all sorts of languages, document types, file types, and layouts. And you don't have time to kind of configure or play with this. We just want a single solution that can handle the full range of data that's being ingested in your organization. So this is a big part of how we differentiate ourselves. But also our technical approach is slightly different, because in order to do this, in order to have the capability to process this vast variety and vast volume of data, you really can't rely on a single combination of AI, OCR, computer vision. You have to really draw on a range of different technologies. So we do use a range of different OCR tools. We use a range of different LLMs, because the same foundational models can't handle, say, English financial statements in the same way that they might handle a handwritten Mandarin delivery note.
And so, Ben, how did you do this? So you had to, and I think, look, what I like to do in these conversations is like break them down into very small lessons that people can take away as a comparison. Like, so the first one, of course, is you need to have a huge problem, a huge market. It's got to be something very big you're dealing with. The second thing is that you can't do it with a small person. Like, when you are taking on a monster problem, we need to deal with it with respect. Now, we can eat the elephant like one bite at a time. I don't know where that phrase came from, but we can do that from one bite at a time. But we have to have like bites based on us having the best experience in that areas. So how did you go about getting the people that would be able to build out the models that you need? Like, you're talking about large language models and all kinds of things, which are incredibly difficult to build. So how did you do that at the very beginning when you were a poor startup?
So I started with my co-founder. My co-founder is also based in Singapore. He's English. He's a PhD computer scientist. He has background in machine learning for quantum and traditional applications. So that's a pretty strong starting point. From there, we were able to leverage a number of other different experts in this field. So we were in AI since 2019. This isn't a recent thing for us. We started as an AI native company during all the kind of crypto hype in 2018, 2019. We stay close to a lot of the developments in academia and also in the corporations who have AI capabilities. And we've basically found people who believe in what we're doing. They've left large organizations like SAP to join us because they see it themselves.
Yeah, because you're leading from a level of expertise. Like, you came in as like an extremely strong person from the consultancy perspective. Your founder came in from an extremely strong perspective from the building side of it. So now we have a team which is fit for purpose. We're not
Right.
just promising that we're going to come up with the solutions. So that's very brilliant. Okay, third area, and I'm going through these because I want to try and get like the big learns that people can get. And I also want the investors to see the components that you built to actually make you as strong as you actually ended up becoming. So you then said, okay, now we got to get this to market. We know what the huge problem is. We got this nailed. We know we need an amazing team to be able to build the technology to be able to start to overcome these problems. And we know that over time, the customers will also fill in the gaps. Next comes, who the heck do we approach? Right. I know you started at the beginning and you started going after startups, and then very quickly you realized startups mallow, enterprises bueno. And you started going for the enterprises. Talk us a little bit about that decision making and how you started going through the ideal customer profiles to work out which one is the greatest champion when it comes to time and opportunity living together.
Yeah. We started out initially going after small businesses and startups, like you said. So this was around late 2019, early 2020. We had our first iteration of our product. We went after these customers because they were easy to approach. We understood the problem that they had. Fundamentally, this problem is a problem that every company has, but it just varies in severity depending on how big you get. Unfortunately, this is a challenging kind of proposition because they have limited budget, and Singapore is a pretty small market, relatively speaking. It's about 6 million people. So it's very challenging to reach startups and small businesses in other countries very early on. That basically different Asian countries have different ways of doing business. So it's quite difficult to try and replicate the same go-to-market motion that works in one country in another country. And then the third challenge was COVID. A lot of the customers we had secured and onboarded and were heavy users simply didn't exist but by the middle of COVID. So we really had to reassess, our ideal customer. We were fortunate to win our first enterprise contract around late 2020 after long conversations and speaking with various decision makers. But when we did win that contract, we came to the realization that, hey, these guys have this problem too, but it's just so much more difficult for them. The volume of data that they're dealing with is the one customer is the same as 10,000 of these smaller customers. It makes so much more sense to go after these enterprise customers, despite the longer sales cycle. The ticket size is just so much bigger. So that's when we made the decision to kind of go up market for these large enterprises.
But they come with a problem, and the problem is that they don't want to talk to little people like us. And this is the challenge. I think this is why this restream will be so valuable for people, because all of us know the same thing. If I can deal with a Microsoft, with a Google, with an Apple, they have lots of money, they've got departments that will do that, I will be wealthy forever and the money will rain through. But what we also know is they'll never talk to us. And the people that we're getting through to, if we use SDRs doesn't work because none of these people are picking up the phone to some person over in India or Ireland or England or somewhere else asking if they can make an appointment for a company that they've never heard of. Emails, they already get hundreds of emails into their inbox every day. Delete. So how did you break into these enterprises? How did you grow your company from zero in revenue with a big market, with a very red ocean, not from what you're providing? It's a very blue ocean from what you're providing, but a red ocean from what people are promising they're providing, which all kind of sounds the same to the CEO, to the companies. How did you break through to millions of dollars in revenue, which is where you are right now?
Yeah, that's it. So we did try these approaches you talk about. We have cold outbound, we have SDRs, we experimented with self sign up for these small customers, attempting a product led growth motion. But as you know, when you go up market to enterprises, it's more of a sales-led approach. You have multiple touch points in the organization. Being in such a small market in Singapore, you're sort of forced to build a global product because the market is so small. You have to really accelerate your product development to have this product that's ready to go to any country, really.
Yeah.
But the challenge is that, in Asia, it's just so fragmented. Despite being the biggest geography by population and by GDP, every country has a slightly different way of doing business. And we simply don't have we didn't have the funds to put boots on the ground in every country and have salespeople going out to try to build these relationships. Many of these organizations in different locations in Asia wouldn't even open emails or pick up the phone. Then you've got the language barrier on top of that, right? So what worked for us was a partner-led growth model or an ecosystem-led growth model.
I like it. I like it. How do you convince these partners? Because you got to go. So I love this. So you decided rather than just going into the I'm trying to think of a non-relationship, like rather than going straight to the partner, to the girl that you want to talk to, you're talking to her best friend or his best friend. Okay, this is an equal opportunities thing.
A matchmaker. You need a matchmaker.
You're talking to the matchmaker or the person who's the direct influencer. So how did you build up your currency with that person so that person felt it was in their interest to do it? Because everybody's going to agree here. If we can break in through partners, if we spend a couple of hours a day outreaching to all of the partners, all of the resellers, all of the people that are going to touch our enterprise audience that we're going after, if we have a valuable product, we are going to win quicker. So I love it. So how did you do that?
So broadly, we have three different categories of partners. There's the reseller or referral partner. There is the implementation partner. So it could be a system integrator or something like that. And then we have platform partners. All of them obviously have an incentive to drive their own top line revenue, right? You need to give them some kind of incentive to work with you. For the first category, the referral partner, it could be a commission or some kind of resale incentive. For the implementation partner, it's a really good partnership because they are working on these huge digital transformation projects. The end users need a trustworthy partner or consultant to deliver these projects, and these guys have the ear of the finance director or the IT director. And if you're in bed with them, then you're going to be one of the first to know about these projects, particularly if you're a fundamental part of that digital transformation. So in that case, we're happy to kind of let them take the implementation revenue, but we also make them look good because we deliver a strong solution that is fit for purpose. It's one tool that processes all their data across the world, as opposed to having multiple vendors in different countries, in different departments, doing the same thing. And then the platform partners, the likes of the cloud providers, AWS, were listed on their marketplaces, etc. What's in it for them? Well, we help them increase their own cloud spend revenue. So our end users are increasing their usage on the cloud, and in turn, this drives revenue for the cloud providers as well. Or it could be the likes of SAP or one of the ERP companies that we are partnered with. We are helping them drive their top line as well, but there has to be some kind of incentive, generally the financial incentive. Yeah.
And I love this. And we heard, for those of you who heard the restream that we did with Rushab, who is a partner, by the way, of Staples over at Matchbook, and Matchbook passed business over to Staple, and they build partnerships there as well. But you heard Rushab talking about his way of breaking into enterprises was to try and go. He tried the front door, and it was brutal going through the front door because the SDRs and stuff didn't work. And where his mind went to was building up domain authority by creating these groups whereby the experts could come in, and then the corporations would come in, and then Matchbook would look like it is the thought leader in that industry, which is a smart way of doing it, but it's also a slower way of doing it, right? What Ben's talking about here is coming in through the side door and saying, look, I want to make my partners look good. I want to make sure that no matter what happens, and the thing is, when you do this, there is a higher burden of proof, okay? Because you cannot make a partner look bad. If you make a partner look bad, I mean, it's a wonderful way of breaking in, but it's a dangerous way of breaking in because you got to be really sure on your product. But if you are sure on your product, and you go into these people and you say, I will make you look good. I will make money for you. I will make sure that our organization provide what we promised we were going to provide by 10. Then boy, these people can multiply, right?
Exactly right. And I mean, through this approach, I mean, we broke into markets we didn't think we possibly could. I mean, we have users in 56 countries now. We closed a huge enterprise contract in Japan, and none of us even really speak Japanese, so it opens so many doors. If you can prove yourself and demonstrate value for the partners, they will take you anywhere.
Wonderful. And then how do you follow up with that partnership? So first of all, how do you find them? Like, did you just find one and you go after the others? Did you do it a little bit like by osmosis at the beginning, or was it a very specific campaign to go after them?
Yeah, a lot of it was referrals. I mean, we managed to get some very big introductions to partners like Accenture and some of the big four, and who in turn themselves are quite credible organizations, but in turn they introduced us to a range of other different companies as well.
And by the way, on that point, I remember even at the beginning when you and I first spoke, I can't remember if it was Accenture or Deloitte or Ernst & Young. I think it was Ernst & Young. But you said to me, hey, our KPMG, but you're like, hey, Brian, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work really, really, really hard. And because I think you've been quite humble here, because you're like saying, I'm going to work really hard on like this consultancy. It's a top 5 consultancy in the world. We know they're connected with all the people. I know people who are in there. But what happens when you do that, when you're very visible in front of one and you put the work in, not just one meeting, but multiple meetings, coming back on multiple projects, what happens is in those firms, the partners leave and they go everywhere. So KPMG is leaving to Ernst & Young, and Ernst & Young is going down to Deloitte. They're setting up their own company. And so it mushrooms out, because what you're really doing is you're getting a brain trust of the smartest people in the world, are the most trusted people in the world, that I will say, at solving the problem that the CEOs need a big 5 firm to do. So just what seems like luck actually are by referrals, actually is because of the hard work you did at the beginning.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that way, but yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And that's how you mushroom it out. If you were going to go back again, I always think, like, even me with the accelerator and the venture capital firm, I'm like, man, I wish I knew this stuff like 4 years ago. I wouldn't have any hair. It would be awesome. Like, if you were going to go back now and to where you were then, and you were going to redo your partnership program in the knowledge that it is as viciously effective that it is today, what would it look like? Like, what would you do? What systems would you set up? What outreach would you do? Who would you hire to do it? And how many people would you be approaching for what outcome?
Oh, wow. Big question, if only. Well, I mean, coming to the realization first, I wish I came to the realization earlier that, distribution beats product, really. Like, I think Justin Khan or someone said, first-time entrepreneurs obsess over the product, but second-time entrepreneurs obsess over distribution. And it's so true. Like, if we had a focus on this earlier, it would have seen scale much quicker. But it's been a learning. I guess generally I would have been far more methodical about reaching out to these partners. we talked about how a lot of this happened by referral and through introductions, but I wish I had sat down and thought about how we could get this product into the hands of our end customers much more effectively and efficiently. Understanding that these consultants, these digital transformation advisors, these implementation partners are working on the projects that we want to be part of all the time. So developing a list of these organizations, the geographies they operate in, and the key decision makers in those organizations. If we had done that in a more methodical way, that would be would have been ideal. And it's probably how I'd do it if I had my time again. But yeah, running potentially an outreach campaign as you would to potential prospects, customer prospects, in the same way you could do that for partner prospects. I think
By the way, Ben, just thinking about numbers for a second.
Yeah.
Let's just take an Ivy League school, right? Let's say Harvard this year. How many? I mean, I don't know. I'm just like an Irish kid, but like how many kids would be in a year in Harvard or in a year in Stanford?
Oh, gee,
A couple of hundred.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say a couple of hundred, right? And if you're Harvard, I'm sorry if it's a couple of thousand or if it's less, but like we'll say 300 just for argument's sake. And so, how many Ivy League schools great schools are there? And we're also including England, and we're including France, and we're including everywhere. Like we're including Cambridge University and Oxford University, and I'm throwing UCLA in there, and I'm throwing USC in there because they're great schools too. Maybe like 500, 300, 500 incredible colleges.
Yeah.
And like of the people who go to those schools, what percentage become consultants? I'm trying to go scale here because you and I have been talking about KPMG and Deloitte and all these things, but actually the amount of like 4 and 5 and 2 and 1 person consultancies that come out of these schools is mind blowing.
True. No, there's thousands potentially.
There's like thousands, tens of thousands, and these people are not numbnuts, right? These people are coming from like highly educated backgrounds with very strong knowledge about finance, and they know they have one problem and one thing. They actually have 2 major problems, which I actually wouldn't wish on anyone. Like the first one is that they have all of their friends who it seems like every single one of their friends are rich and they're not, right? And the second problem they have is that because they've gone to a place like this, everybody expects them to be really successful. Like I was really lucky. My bar was low from my family for my whole life, right? But you go to this school, you're in all kinds of trouble because suddenly they're like, hey, he went there. I can't believe it. Like, what is he doing? He's making no money. So they need to make money. And they know the places to make money are in consulting on chaos or consulting on finance. They're the only 2 places. So if you were going back again, actually, there are tens of thousands of partners, resellers, platforms that you could put a really strong attack plan on to go after them and probably reduce down the amount of time by, I don't know, a third, 2. Like it's crazy when you think about it.
It is. It's your point made earlier though around making sure that you deliver. I think it goes both ways because you want to make sure the partners that you ultimately team with, they have to be quality. They also have to deliver because you don't want to you don't want to throw it out to everybody. You do have to do some level of qualification to make sure that they can actually deliver on the promises that they're making. So that's something that we've also learned. But if you have a mechanism to do that and a way to quickly qualify or test the capabilities of these partners, then that's something we would need to do as well.
Yeah, and I love your phrase about distribution, eating product for breakfast every single day. And so what Ben has brought in here, and I think this is a really lovely place to like leave everyone with something to go forward with, is that there are companies today that are oversubscribing rounds, staple, right? That there are companies today that are growing in 3-digit growth, right? Ben and Staple are going at hundreds of percent growth every single year. They will do the same thing this year. And next year, they will do the same thing again. They will go from a couple of million this year up to a couple of million multiplied by 300% next year. And then that will continue going forward, because I believe, and you're hearing this from me, not from him, I believe they have hit escape velocity. And I think you've also taken this really nice thought process about how do you build a great company. You need to have a huge market to go after. You just have to. If you're going to build a venture backable company, you need to make sure that your team are actually capable. Outsourcing this to a team in Ireland is not necessarily going to be the thing that's going to make you the best people at like providing the skill sets that you've already outsourced to your customers, right? You need to make sure that you have these in-house and you're controlling it in-house. Number three, you want to make sure that you're building and distributing in the best way possible. For Staples' perspective, it was using distribution through partners as their principal way of working it. And you could argue that actually their timing was as perfect as it could be, because they went through the customer process to realize the best way to distribute. And I think your last point, Ben, about it's not just velocity and speed. It's about making sure that that love with that customer, the obsession with the customer, making sure they're getting it is like held to the very highest account. Because at the beginning, we are at greatest risk of never ever being used by a customer again, because they will remember. So I love how you combine that. Can you, and if there are any other points, just real nuggets that you can drop in here, let us know. But otherwise, I'd like to finish with this. I'd like you to tell us where Staple is going based on everything you've learned, based on how many people do you have in your team now?
31.
31 people, right? Based on the 31 people that you have in your team, based on the incredible revenue growth you're going through, based on the oversubscribed round that you just came from, in the most difficult time to have an oversubscribed round. We are in July, actually, 2024, the 1st of July. Tell us what 2025 looks like and 2026 looks like from an investor perspective if they're looking at you right now.
So we are fast growing, very capital efficient. We actually had our first profitable quarter in Q3 last year. So, I mean, we have the unit economics that stack up. And part of that is because of this, partnership approach. We're leveraging them to reduce our CAC. We were profitable. We took investment, and we've used that to grow more in the past 3 quarters. We're looking to return to profitability by 2025, 2026.
Nice.
We have grown over 200% since this time last year. That growth trajectory is continuing. We are, breaking.
You think 5 million? You think 5 million next year?
Yeah.
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 That's just two little letters. Yeah.
Stone cold will be. We are looking to raise in the next 12 months. Our last round was 3 times oversubscribed. So it was a very popular fundraise in a very risk-averse market, I would say. So, Southeast Asia is definitely not as, aggressive in the fundraising as North America. So I think that's
because you're growing, baby. Because you're growing. Because you're going to stay stone cold. Look, you're going to do 5+ next year. You're growing at 200% growth. Your round is oversubscribing by 3 times. Generally speaking, I try not to hang around with people like you, because you make me look bad in front of my family. But because we're invested, it's okay. So look, congratulations on everything you've done. Everybody listening, please understand, it is the fusion of incredible customer service, taking care. By the way, one last thing. How many of your customers have left you?
Well, I mean, the SME customers, that's it.
The enterprises.
None. No.
There you go. So makes my point. So the fusion of, and I didn't even know the answer to that, but I knew the answer to that, right? So the fusion of incredible, obsessive customer love and an unbelievably strong focus on building on one channel, which they believe in to a fault, has taken this company to the lengths that it's going to come to. It's going to keep on growing. It's going to be a winner for us. I'm grateful to Ben and his team for everything that they've done. And he will continue to have our support for anything he needs. And entrepreneurs, learn, listen, implement, and execute, just like the Stone Cold Killer right here.
Thank you, Brian and the dojo, for all the help as well. We appreciate all the support.
Always, my friend. We just